What is going on, everyone? It's your guy Cole Jackson back here on Road Graders, and today we are going to be tying up some of the news around the Baltimore Ravens offensive line, getting you guys ready as we start to go through rookie camp, mini camp, OTAs, all that stuff coming up. We want to keep tabs on the offensive line. One of the most critical storylines around the 2025 Baltimore Ravens is how this line can take the next step. If you guys are looking forward to this breakdown, hit that like button, hit subscribe for me if you're new here. Before we jump into a big thank you to the sponsors of this video, One Bone. Tired of clothes that don't fit right? One Bone is the first size inclusive brand made specifically for bigger bodies. That's right. It's for the big boys in the trenches on the offensive line. Premium fabrics, perfect fit, confidence built in. One Bone. It's not for everybody. It's just for everybody. Go over to One Bone, check it out. Use promo code Cole Jackson 15. You'll get 15% off your first order. Use the link in the description down below. Now let's dive into some of the updates around the offensive line, and starting most notably with the biggest piece that came out this weekend, and that is the signing of Joseph Noteboom, former LA Ram swing tackle, a guy that was in position to take over that left tackle spot when Andrew Whitworth retired. Didn't quite work out that way. It ended up going to Alaric Jackson. Noteboom kind of settled in as a swing tackle, and Noteboom's issue over the last few years, over the last few years has been mostly related to battling back from injuries and missing time. And so not ideal to hear that, but I think there's a ton of upside there with Noteboom. He's a guy that's played both left tackle and right tackle. He's also played some left guard. So a guy that I think the Ravens see as someone that can play multiple spots. They're obviously missing that versatile skill set right now that Patrick McCary brought, just someone that can dive in and be that depth piece. I don't see Noteboom competing for a starting spot. I also don't really see him as a guard specifically. I think they've got him as a swing offensive tackle. And, we talked about it last week on Thursday in kind of where the holes remaining. They had brought in George Fant prior to the draft. I really thought they were going to go with Fant. I think I presented three options, and Noteboom wasn't one of them. I looked more at Jedrick Wills out of Cleveland as sort of that younger developmental guy that still had some potential that they could develop. They end up going with Noteboom instead. Both Wills and Noteboom, very similar guys in the sense that injuries have plagued their career. I think Noteboom, when healthy, has been better than Wills. So that's probably the most exciting thing. And there's two major impacts that this move has. It doesn't just aid the offensive tackle depth, but if you take a look, you bring in Noteboom, and I have him listed under right tackle on the depth chart, but he's really kind of the primary left tackle or right tackle. I could have put him in both spots, but it was just easier to do this. So the two big upsides to this is, one, it insulates Carson Vincent. So Carson Vincent, if an injury happens, God forbid, to either Ronnie Stanley or Roger Rosengarten, Noteboom's going to be that first guy off the bench. And we'll be doing Carson Vincent's film tomorrow on Wednesday. And you're going to see why we don't want him playing right away. We see Carson Vincent as that developmental option and that guy that is going to probably take a couple years, but has all of the traits and intangibles that you can develop into a starting caliber left tackle. And so we'll dive into that more, but Noteboom insulates him. He doesn't have to go into the fray. If Ronnie got hurt in the first couple weeks, the Ravens would be in a really tough spot. It's either moving Roger Rosengarten to left tackle and inserting Vincent at right tackle, or Vincent goes right into left tackle. It's not a good outcome for the Ravens. So Noteboom gives them a little bit of flexibility to be able to insulate Vincent. The second impact, and probably the biggest one for me, is the impact this has on Emery Jones Jr. Jones Jr. was obviously a 3-year right tackle at LSU. We did his film on Friday. I made the case for him as a guard. This aids that case, obviously. So Noteboom comes in, becomes a primary backup offensive tackle, and that allows Emery Jones Jr. to focus on competing at the guard position. So I have him under right guard here. That's because he played right tackle at LSU. I feel like it's more natural transition to right guard. I've made this very clear. I like Andrew Voorhees' upside a lot more than Daniel Faalele's. I think Andrew Voorhees fits the scheme. I think Daniel Faalele doesn't. I think Emery Jones Jr. as a guard will fit this scheme. So we're going to get to Jones here in a second in terms of updates, but I see this as a move that allows Jones Jr. to actually play guard, and they're not going to force Jones to kind of be a tackle when I think he's got a lot more upside at the guard position at the NFL level. Now that brings us into the update on Emery Jones Jr. So we saw him in some of the practice videos. He was on the field in pads, but he wasn't wearing a helmet. He was standing back watching, and that's because Harbaugh indicated that Emery Jones Jr. has a labrum issue, and he's not expected to practice until perhaps training camp. This to me was a big concern. We've seen this in the past, especially with Harbaugh's injury updates, where guys will come in and have these injury pieces and they last a lot longer than we were hoping. It is so important for these rookies to be able to get into their first training camp. It kind of happened last year with Adisa Isaac. He was hurt early in training camp. He barely played, and you never really got to see him last year. And that's my biggest concern is that this labrum issue that Jones Jr. has. It sounds like he played through it at LSU last year. That very well could have hurt his recovery. It could have made it worse. We're not quite sure if it's a torn labrum, if it's something further. So we don't have a ton of details, but I think this is a huge concern. I will ring the alarm bells on this one just because we've seen this time and time again with mid-round draft picks, even some of the earlier draft picks where they can't get on the field in training camp and it really hurts their ability to get on the field. And I made it clear, I really wanted him to be in that guard competition. If Daniel Falele came out and won it, as much as I've been hard on him, I'll support whoever puts the best film on. That's how I've always operated. I don't have personal agendas, but I really wanted an intense competition at that right guard spot, as well as the left guard spot, to be fair. And I just don't think that we're going to get that now because I think delaying unless he hits that training camp timeline. But like I said, we've seen this time and time again where the injury updates come, and then there's going to be a further update where it's he's working back, and I'm really nervous about that one. So I will be an alarmist on this, fully admit it. I know it'll probably annoy people, but I really don't like that. Moving on, another piece. I'll go back to the depth chart here. So I have a slotted in as the third string center, Thomas Perry, and this is a guy that trained with Duke Manyweather. The Ravens have brought him in as a tryout contract, so he's not officially listed on the rookie mini camp. He's in there as a tryout. I'm really interested to see where this one goes because Duke has a history of developing guys that come into O-line masterminds and guys that go through his program pre-draft. They have a history of developing really well at the NFL level. And, when you kind of look at what he said is in context here, this is the fourth part of his quote. So Thomas Perry went to Div 3 Middlebury College. So that's like, I don't have any film on him because nobody's out there grinding Middlebury College film. But he went to the Shrine Bowl and looked really, really good. And so that's what he's saying here. So his performance at the Shrine Bowl perfectly illustrates Thomas's ability to absorb new concepts quickly and apply them at a high level, traits that define an elite mindset. Whatever organization lands Thomas Perry isn't just getting a player, they're getting a rare individual with unlimited potential. His ceiling has yet to be touched, and his future is incredibly bright. Now, to be fair, this is his coach, his training coach, obviously giving a very positive review. I understand that, but he multiple times throughout the training program he runs the pre-draft offensive line masterminds training program, has gone on Twitter, put up clips of his film, and has been just gushing over Thomas Perry. He doesn't do that with every player. So this is just one of those interesting things that I want to keep an eye on because I do think if you look, Nick Samak, I don't have really anything negative to say about him in the sense of his play. We've barely gotten to see him play. When he did play, I didn't see anything glaringly bad. So I'm not overly concerned there. But if you have a guy that's going to develop really well and potentially get into that guard spot or be a backup center to Tyler Linderbaum, I think he could push Nick Samak a little bit this offseason. Nick Samak definitely doesn't have a locked-in spot, so I'll be really interested to see if they sign him to a camp deal, or if they let him walk. So it could just be a lot of fluff from his training coach, or it could be the Ravens finding a diamond in the rough. And then speaking to that, The guy I have slated in at the third team left guard spot is Jared Penning, brother of uh, New Orleans Saint Trevor Penning, a guy that Ravens fans will be very familiar with from a couple drafts ago, was heavily linked to their draft pick. And so his younger brother was also at the University of Northern Iowa and has some pretty solid film and also is training with Duke. So he was expected to be a top UDFA. And the Ravens went out and grabbed him to come in and compete at the guard spot. So I don't have on the depth chart. I don't have guys like Damian Dalcourt, Corey Bullock, guys that I'm not doing that out of a sign of disrespect. They all performed pretty well at in the preseason last year, especially Corey Bullock, who I believe was a Maryland Terp, so a lot of you would be familiar with him. So they're also factoring into this competition. So what the Ravens have done is they've really set up a ton of guys that can come in and compete on the interior while providing really solid depth at the tackle spots. Like I think being four deep with true tackles, where we're not looking at guys that have to kick out, having Stanley, Vincent, Rosengarten, and Noteboom, that's a pretty solid approach. And I think the Ravens have done a really good job of having bookend tackles that I think can be high quality. I think Stanley and Rosengarten, specifically in pass protection, can be a top 10 tackle pair. I truly believe that. And I think having Vincent and Noteboom as your second team guys, I think that's a really good position given the lack of offensive tackle depth around the league. Then you look at the inside, and we've all been saying it. We need competition for the guard spots, and they've brought in a lot of interesting guys, a lot of guys that could be diamonds in the rough. They also brought back a guy like Bullock who performed really well that could, go out and have a really good training camp and a good preseason. So the big thing for me, I'd really like to see Emery Jones get back for the start of training camp. I hope that timeline is true and that he can be out there. Like I said, I'm worried about it, but that's where the offensive line is looking. I think overall, my opinion is that the Ravens have checked a lot of boxes in terms of what I wanted to see. I wanted quality depth at the offensive tackle position, check. I wanted competition at the guard position, check. And I did want to get some depth at center just because, again, I value competition. I want guys to be able to push some of those late round picks from previous drafts. And I think they did that with Nick Zamak and Thomas Perry. Again, I really think they should keep Thomas Perry because Duke Manyweather just has this ability to develop some of these guys into studs and guys that kind of surprise you. Take a look at a guy like Quinn Miners. He was a guy that worked with Duke and then, really, really shined. So looking forward to that. If you guys enjoyed this offensive line breakdown, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here. And as always, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Peace out, everyone.